I had been in the LSO less than a year when we embarked upon this exciting world tour. David Measham, of course, violin, was first off the plane. We had just arrived in Hong Kong, and this British Eagle plane was to be our sole transport throughout the whole tour, including the captain and the whole crew. Our visit to Hong Kong coincided with the visit of Princess Margaret and the Earl of Snowdon, and they attended our concert. We stayed at the luxurious Mandarin Hotel, which in those days was right on the seafront. No visit to Hong Kong would be complete without a visit to the Victoria Peak to look over the city, or Aberdeen Fish Market. Be careful when offering a few coins to the children. Generosity like that can backfire. The flight to Kuala Lumpur and staying in the Cathay Hotel. Andrew McGee practices on a piccolo violin. Beautiful beaches, beautiful sand and sunshine. It must be Australia. Admiring the black swan is Ernest Fleischmann, our manager, in dark glasses, and on the left Istvan Kertész, our conductor. Lockley's Hotel in Adelaide, where I was sharing a room with a very sick David Measham. Ken Heath and John Catlow cellos on Brighton Beach near Adelaide, and sitting down against the wall too is Brian Thomas violin. And here is Andrew attempting communication with the indigenous population. And some brief shots of Melbourne. My turn in the cockpit, and just as we're approaching Sydney. Now some ground level shots of Bondi Beach. This is what Sydney Opera House, that iconic structure, looked like during construction. And we were scheduled to play in the unfinished interior as a sort of publicity stunt, which of course required us to wear hard hats. And now the descent into Brisbane. As the Australian part of the tour comes to an end, we board Good Fortune once again, and here we find ourselves in Fiji. Next stop, Hawaii and the Moana Hotel. After 6 weeks, we finally arrive at our last port of call, New York. The start of many visits to Daytona Beach. In 1966, we were invited to take part in their festival. For the members of the orchestra, 30 miles of beautiful beach and all the other facilities that Daytona had to offer was like paradise. Marineland, one of the many attractions to visit. The office of Austin O. Coombs. He was one of the festival's hosts to look after the orchestra. A big-hearted and generous man, he would take the members of the orchestra on various trips, including on his yacht. One of Florida's main attractions to see was Silver Springs. The invitation to visit the famous Daytona Speedway was accepted happily by most of the orchestra, especially as it included a speedy trip around the circuit. A shot of yours truly on my way to a concert in the afternoon with my wife Susan. The members would take every opportunity to enjoy the sunshine. This is just before the concert. With the camera on me for once, Gervais Depire just couldn't resist getting in on the act. No trip to Florida would be complete without a visit to Cape Canaveral. Orchestra members were frequently in demand by local TV and radio. In this instant, it's Michael Winfield, oboe, being interviewed. Now he's put his boat away, Austin is about to take Susan and I on a little jaunt around Daytona. Sadly, all good things must come to an end, and this is the beginning of the journey home. Such was the success of the first Daytona Beach Festival that in 1967 we returned. This time we had with us an eminent guest, the author J.B. Priestley, who you can see sitting on the left here. He was later to write a book entitled Trumpets Over the Sea. The Black Duck Fishing Expedition. Once again, just as the previous year, we were treated to all manner of trips and experiences. Just as one might expect, the trip started out with a lot of jollity, but no fish. But then the cry went up, "Stuart's caught something," and we all rushed to that side of the boat. It looked to be pretty big, and in fact when reeled in it was an amberjack. But if we thought that was the end of our fishing trip, we were very much mistaken, as we all reeled in fish after fish. All great fun, but some didn't enjoy it quite so much. The shoal of amberjacks appeared to become so confused that in the end it was possible to simply gaff them out of the water. As Dennis Gaines is conversing with one of the fish, Frank Matteson is preparing a nasty surprise for a sleeping Basil Smart. Of course, we couldn't resist showing off to passing boats. Ours is much bigger than yours. After offloading the booty, here comes the proud photograph. An exciting invitation to visit a local small island, or as it turned out, a very early effort at timeshare selling. But that didn't worry us, as we were going to get a free aeroplane ride to a beautiful little island called Great Harbour Key. And then back to reality at a wet Daytona Beach airport, watching as our plane comes in ready to take us back home. Our third visit to the Daytona Beach Festival, and here we are at a party at one of the houses of the festival hosts. Yes, festival host Austin Coombs has upgraded his plane to a Beechcraft and he's taking us on a jaunt around Daytona. The LSO van is at Heathrow Airport as the orchestra is off to Israel. Conductor Yasha Horrestein with members of the orchestra embarking. In the summer of 1969, the LSO was invited to take part in the prestigious festival at Ravinia near Chicago. Back again in sunny Florida, Daytona Beach, for the 4th festival. This has now become an annual event. Horn player David Gray arriving in his pretty little MG motorcar. The LSO is in Swansea in South Wales. Tour to Eastern Europe. Here we are boarding a bus in Bucharest, the capital of Romania. As the orchestra was to move on to northern Romania, just for a bit of a change, I hired a car and took 3 of my fiddle players with me. The second part of this Eastern European tour took us to Hungary, and here we are in Budapest. In 1971, we had a trip to Russia and visited both Moscow and Leningrad, as it was then. The train journey back to Moscow. And finally, from a cine camera point of view with the LSO, a tour to Japan and Korea.